Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Over next 20 to 25 minutes, I shall be discussing mental health issues in antenatal period with special reference to COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, we have another presentation later on the mental health issues in postnatal period, and in my presentation I'll keep the focus on the various threshold and sub-threshold conditions and their management. So, as we all know, mental and reproductive health have a bi-directional relationship. On one hand, reproductive events and processes have psychological concomitants. Likewise, the psychological states can also modulate the reproductive events. In general, some of the background facts uh, are that women are twice as likely to get mood episodes compared to men. Most of these episodes occur during the reproductive years between 25 to 45 years of age. And because of their occurrence in these decades of life, they often coincide with pregnancy and perinatal period. Additionally, pregnancy by itself poses an additional biological stressor as well as a psychosocial stressor. Now, among women who subsequently were diagnosed as postpartum depression, it was seen that 27% had entered pregnancy with a pre existing psychiatric disorder. 33% had onset during pregnancy. So, all in all, as many as 60% of women either had pre existing psychiatric issues before pregnancy or had onset of mental health conditions during pregnancy, compared to 40% who had postpartum onset. Here, uh, I would like to put a spotlight that while postpartum depression is often more frequently talked about, but a large proportion of women also suffer from various mental health conditions, including depression, while they are pregnant, and often beginning from first trimester itself. So, how common are mental health problems in the context of pregnancy? So, even in routine non COVID times, non pandemic times, they are pretty common. In high income countries, about 10% of pregnant women do experience a mental disorder, majority of which are either minor or major depressions or the spectrum of anxiety disorders. As far as low and middle income countries, including India, is concerned, the figure is higher. The weighted mean prevalence in this systemic review was 15 point in this systematic review with 13 papers from 9 countries was 15.6%, and this refers only to those studies which had assessed depression in antenatal period while the woman was pregnant before childbirth. Now, if we include the sub-threshold conditions, if we include the non-psychiatric conditions, but nonetheless, the mentally distressing conditions, the psychological morbidity, which may not be diagnosable from official classificatory system perspective, but nonetheless is the source of impairment, distress, uh, then as many as over half of women might suffer from mental distress or psychological morbidity during their pregnancy. So, there are a variety of risk factors which range from biological risk factors, which are more internal, more innate risk factors, to a spectrum of psychosocial risk factors. Now, these are the various factors which have been found in various studies. But in the context of pandemic, some of these risk factors uh, show an escalation. For example, the socioeconomic gaps may widen even more than their usual, with families experiencing financial constraints and other resource constraints. The socioeconomic disadvantage may pose a bigger risk, for example. We have heard reports from all across the world about increase in domestic violence during the lockdown. So, intimate partner violence is intricately associated with maternal mental ill health, and which has shown an escalation uh, from earlier this year, since the lockdown and the pandemic situation started. Additionally, certain women with pre existing mental health problems might be more vulnerable to exacerbation of their symptoms, which may have been under control previously, but in the context of the risk of infection and in the context of the need of precautions for one's own safety, for one's unborn baby's safety, the mental health problems may show an escalation. Now, we have seen the concerns and anxieties of pregnant women being highlighted in various platforms. And if we can quickly list them, for example, in the urban nuclear family context, the pregnant women may not have the usual sources of support. For example, earlier families would travel and stay, or the pregnant female might go to her maternal home during pregnancy. So, which may be restricted because of the travel restrictions. Uh, Also, there would be concerns about the antenatal visits because of the infection concerns in the hospital environment. There may be delays in getting appointment because of the lockdown situation. Some pregnant mothers who have to constantly use alcohol-based disinfectants or sodium hypochlorite to prevent or control the virus might have some concerns about the effect of these chemical agents on the unborn fetus. There may be worries about vertical transmission, worries about the safety of breastfeeding, worries about any emergency care in case it is required during the pregnancy. Uh, some worries may concern to day-to-day practical or logistical aspects. For example, arranging one's own personal transportation to make antenatal visits instead of the use of cabs or public transportation, for example, which is no longer feasible. Also, there may be other family members in the same family who would be going out, and there may be risk of acquiring infection from those family members. So, thereby the pregnant women may have to isolate herself even within the same family, leading to a sense of loneliness, leading to a sense of social isolation due to these extra precautions which are necessary for her. There are often inadequate opportunities to engage in physical fitness in lockdown. For example, one can no longer go to park for a walk, or other changes in lifestyle. For example, non-participation in any other group activity, or even the culturally sanctioned or other familial celebrations, which are the norm in the context of pregnancy. For example, in the eighth month or in the first trimester, so all those celebrations could no longer take place, thereby adding on to the mental ill health. All these factors cumulatively may contribute to mental ill health in the pregnant women. So these are the concerns raised in various platforms. But as far as research is concerned, uh, has it really led to increase in depressive and anxiety symptoms? Uh, while the research studies are still emerging, I would like to share this one particular study which happened in December in the middle of COVID-19 epidemic in China. So, out of the 2,500 pregnant women, half of the sample was collected prior to the declaration of epidemic, and half of it could be gathered after the epidemic. So, they could compare both the groups. And they found that the pregnant women who were assessed after declaration of epidemic had a significantly higher rate of depressive symptoms and also were more likely to endorse thoughts related to self harm. One of the important factors which can add on to worries and anxieties is the low access to the authentic sources of information. For example, 50% of pregnant women in this particular study had no knowledge pertaining to safety of breastfeeding, and nearly two-thirds did not know if there are any birth defects or preterm births associated with COVID-19 or not. While this information might be available, but the accessibility of that to pregnant women is an issue. So mental health conditions can manifest in a spectrum ranging from non-specific symptoms to an occasional worry which is responsive to reassurance to occasional nightmares, and it may progress to minor but nonetheless disabling symptoms to major threshold conditions, uh, generalized anxiety to panic to depressive episodes of varying severity from mild to moderate to severe. So, therefore, considering the high prevalence and under recognition of the maternal mental health issues, uh, even in routine times and specifically in COVID times when access to healthcare facilities is even more limited, there is a there's an urgent need to screen and assess and bring the mental component as an integral part of the antenatal visits. Uh, Screening tools are available. Many of them are uh, quick, self rated, the translated and validated local versions are also available. And some examples are even for general population, brief versions of journal health questionnaire or self reporting questionnaire are available. But EPDS, that is Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale, is more specific for pregnant females and for postpartum depression. And those who screen positive do not necessarily have a psychiatric diagnosis. The presence or absence of psychiatric diagnosis need to be confirmed in a further clinical interview. However, a screen positive case uh, indicates presence of a psychological morbidity at the least and could be a potential candidate for psychosocial interventions. So this is Edinburgh postnatal depression scale. It has only 10 items rated from 0 to 3, and a score of 13 or more indicates presence of depression. And Edinburgh postnatal depression scale should be a part and parcel of screen in each antenatal as well as the postnatal visit. In addition to use of screening tools, some of the introductory questions can help in establishing rapport, uh, as well as can also screen for any mood changes or any anxiety symptoms. Simple questions like, have you ever felt sad, depressed or hopeless in past 2 to 4 weeks? What is your interest level or energy level? Do you enjoy the things which you usually used to enjoy earlier? Have you felt anxious, worried, or stressed most of the time? And if one feels the answer to many of these questions is coming as yes, the pregnant female may be a candidate for further evaluation. So, the important thing is to have a set of symptoms clustering at the same time, which would qualify as a syndrome. So, an occasional symptom here and there may happen in pregnancy. For example, fatigue may happen as part and parcel of pregnancy. Occasional irritability, occasional sadness lasting for few hours, once or twice a week might happen because of various factors. But if a variety of symptoms, at least three or four or five of them, are happening together around the same time, almost every day, in a pervasive manner, in a more sustained manner, and they are break from one's previous self. Now, and it is associated with distress and certain amount of dysfunction, either in interpersonal or familial context, then that's an indication that the person could be suffering from threshold mental health condition. One should always look for red flag signs such as presence of death wishes or suicidality, etc. So, what are the how to deal with these issues? What are the principles of management? Now, in the limited time available, it's not possible to go through the individualized management for each and every mental health condition, but what we are going to discuss is four or five broad principles of management. The first being active empathic listening and reassurance. Now, in itself, it may feel simple. However, having open, free communication to begin with, having sufficient time to devote for an antenatal visit. In today's context, it may be an antenatal tele-consult. To have enough time, quality time, also yields good therapeutic relationship. And the word therapeutic means the relationship itself translates to some amount of therapeutic benefit for the pregnant woman. With time, one can also explore for any underlying stressors such as domestic violence and listen to the concerns or worries without interrupting. Giving a reassurance for some of the false fears and concerns and acknowledging some of the legitimate concerns might also go a long way. Active listening of this kind helps in ventilation of the patient's emotion, at the end of the which the patient feels better uh, and feels that she was listened to by her treating doctor. So the art of active empathic listening can help in at least the minor subthreshold kind of mental health conditions. The second is provision of proper adequate education about the realistic risk and various aspects pertaining to COVID-19 in pregnancy, and which should also include the risks, for example, the risk associated with fetus, if any, whether the pregnant female would be able to breastfeed in case she becomes a COVID suspect, and so on. Uh, so far, the literature on pregnancy in COVID-19 has largely been reassuring. However, that information may not be available with the pregnant women, and imparting such education is important. Also, this information helps her plan ahead, and planning ahead reduces anticipatory anxiety. Next, principle of management is to have lifestyle changes which are important for relaxation and which are associated with a reduction in stress levels. These include 20 to 30 minutes of physical activity every day, certain amount of meditative activities, for example, visual imagery for relaxation, deep breathing exercises as little as just a few minutes, twice or thrice a day, helps by increasing the parasympathetic tone and which reduces anxiety. Anxiety being manifested as sympathetic overdrive. So, deep breathing exercises and teaching the proper way for deep breathing helps. At the same time, maintaining proper diet, nourishment, and regular circadian rhythms, regular sleep wake cycle, having proper sleep is important for maintaining the euthymic mood. Circadian rhythm disturbances are intricately associated with disturbances of mood and thereby important to take care of. And one can give such printouts and make patient can fill in the charts for better adherence to some of these lifestyle management. Also, brief psychotherapy, though a trained specialist would be preferable if more intensive CBT is needed, but very, very brief psychotherapy broadly based on principles of cognitive behavioral therapy might be useful. And essentially, it involves changing the faulty cognitions, changing the ways of thinking, and helping the mother make a link between her unhealthy thoughts and emotions and its effect on the behavior. So there are manuals, including this one by WHO, which is available for psychosocial management of perinatal depression, which is easily accessible, and using this, even the non specialist staff, the paramedical staff working with in the same setting can also be trained and can be a useful asset. In addition to that, women must be encouraged for self help strategies to assess web based resources, to participate in the self help groups. Uh, Another goal would be coping skills enhancement, wherein the employment of problem solving approaches as opposed to a negative emotion focused coping. For example, if one is unable to get an appointment for ultrasound, rather than crying or blaming one's fortune or feeling guilty that I'm perhaps a bad mother, I could not get the appointment on time for safety of my unborn child. One must engage in problem-solving approach wherein one generates social support, one finds out ways, gathers more information, and tries to take the earliest possible date at the nearest center. In a so to deal with the problem in a more rational, objective manner rather than in a negative, emotional sense of it. Generating social support from friends and family through various social media platforms and the judicious use of such platforms. Res- Using the time to connect with friends and family, to learn a new hobby, for example, as a means of distraction, while at the same time restricting the exposure to unnecessary or alarming news which could be anxiogenic. And finally, there may be a small proportion of cases who have major psychiatric conditions. For example, a woman who has a past history of manic episode and currently is feeling low, currently is feeling sad. Now, this depression, for example, would constitute bipolar depression in view of her past history of manic episode, or if there are any emerging psychotic symptoms. If the depression is suicidal, if there are fleeting, even suicidal ideation, uh, all such pregnancies must be identified early, must be considered as high risk pregnancy, and must be timely referred to a specialist. Another thing which I would like to discuss in this context is that medications must not be stopped suddenly, especially in those women who are on prescribed psychotropic medication and who are suffering from recurrent, major, or severe psychiatric disorder. Uh, the medications uh, might be needed depending on the risk benefit analysis, and there is no blanket rule. While one tries to avoid as far as possible the exposure to medicine in the first 12 months, however, it would depend on case to case basis. And there are specific medications, for example, fluoxetine or sertraline, which are often used in severe cases of depression or in anxiety, which is non responsive to psychosocial or psychological techniques. So, in the end, I would like to emphasize that collaborative care is often needed between mental health specialist, patient, and the prenatal care provider. And a large amount of psychological morbidity can be taken care of by the prenatal care provider with close liaison with mental health specialist as and when necessary. The overall goal is primary, secondary, as well as tertiary prevention through this collaborative care model. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before we take up the next session, I would like to ask ma'am just one question. That ma'am, what do you think? Why do you think that the antenatal depression is so under recognized in our society?
So, as you rightly said, it's an under recognized entity. Depression in general is an under recognized entity, even in general population. But as far as pregnant females are concerned, uh, there are a variety of factors. In fact, at various levels, such factors operate, which lead to under identification and accumulative burden. Uh, for example, at a societal level, there may be a stigma is very important. If a pregnant woman who is, for example, often within first few years of marriage, shares the emotional or some of her psychological issues and asks for consultation with a mental health specialist, it might be considered to be very, very stigmatizing. Often there is a failure to acknowledge that the common mental disorders are actually very, very common, and 1 in 3 will suffer from a common mental disorder in their life. But in context of females, there are several barriers, and in context of pregnant females, the barriers in fact multiply because pregnancy is supposed to be a period of joy and bliss, and the people around her may fail to understand the sadness or anxiety or the need to seek help for that. So this is one example of such factors, but I would like to emphasize that such factors, such barriers operate at each and every level, right from individual to institutional level. And there is a need for measures in various regards to bring down these barriers and to promote the access to mental health.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to welcome Dr. Atrey Ganguly, and ma'am is a representative from WHO. I would like to ask one question pertaining to this topic, that what is the burden of maternal mental disorder globally and in India?
Okay, thank you so much. At the outset, my sincere thanks to AIMS for including WHO in this theme of webinar series. Definitely, the global burden, as Madam has earlier said, it is like 10% in the prenatal and 13% in the postnatal. But if we go to the developing countries like India, it will be much higher. It is about 15.6 in prenatal and almost 19.8, that is 20% in the postnatal phase. So we can see that 1 in 5 women is actually suffering. And why it is important? Because the social stigma and taboo which hinders the person from coming up and seeking help also multiplies the magnitude. So it is a concern, and I also congratulate that you included this in the series of obstetric care webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So now I would like to welcome Dr. Rajesh Sagar. Sir is professor in the department, and he would share his views about postpartum depression.
Thank you. You can hear me. Good afternoon to you, everyone. Am I audible? Just say yes if you are able to hear me. Yeah. Okay, great. First of all, my thanks to Department of Obs and Gynae AIMS, to invite for this important lecture, and also WHO India office. Dr. Atrey Ganguly and others who have conceived the idea, and it is important that in this webinar series on obstetric care in COVID-19, you have included mental health. I think which is so important. I think we all know that no health without mental health. I think that context it becomes so very important, and so. Let me tell you most of the points. I think because the principles are same, Dr. Ramandeep has already covered, and because the principles are same, because when we talk of perinatal mental health, then one part is of pregnancy, the other part is a postpartum care. So, but most of the principles are same. So what I will do, I will speak without slides so that because. So that I can avoid the overlap, with Dr. Ramandeep, what she has said. Okay, so I think with this, then, and also let me tell you that I am not feeling well, so I could not be present in that facility, but I wanted to speak because it's so important topic. So I am speaking remotely. Okay, so I think the topic is mental health issues in postpartum period and their management with special reference to COVID-19 pandemic. I think that is the key thing, and we all are going through this, period. And let me tell you, those who are looking this program, AIMS was one of the first institute where the COVID positive, pregnancy was taken place. My department of Gynae will vouch for that. We know that both they were admitted, so we know that how important it is, and many such pregnancies, that deliveries are taking place in our institute. I think in this COVID-19 worries, there are many questions which would coming to our mind. I will just try to enumerate few. And so those who are listening, they will know that I will start with these questions first. First question: how can I prevent myself from getting the infection? I think that is a very important question, which is not only a pregnant lady. I think to everyone mind is coming. How can I prevent myself from getting the infection? what will be the impact of virus on my unborn baby? I think that is what the major concern is, because what we have to understand the difference between people versus those who are pregnant lady, because there are two lives there. So obviously the concern of a mother is there for unborn baby, which is very, very important. Then the question is, will my mother or husband be allowed to stay with me during the delivery and later? Again, that is the point, because we all know that in our culture, society, when the mother is delivering, a lot of support comes from their family, from their in-laws, so because that's a kind of a culture norm. So in this pandemic, we know that because of restriction of travel and all. So again, that is the concern, that what will happen, how will I get the support from outside? Then of course the question, will transportation be available if I go into labor? I think that again is the point, because we know that especially during the lockdown, this was the question which was coming to everyone's mind, that whether the transportation, and of course people are finding it difficult because they cannot take a public transport, and there are so many issues with that. So again, these were some of the important questions which was coming to not only the pregnant woman mind, but also to the family. Is it safe to go to the hospital for antenatal checkup or scans? And we know that these pregnant women are undergoing a lot of investigation, some of them with the ultrasound and all. So again, the question comes whether is it safe to go to hospital? We know that hospital itself has become a breeding ground. So these are some of the questions which may be coming. Is excessive use of hand sanitizer safe during pregnancy? Again, that is a question coming to mind. Should I get tested for COVID-19? We know in some of the hospitals, before getting delivery, they are undergoing the COVID-19 test. So that again is important question. What if I get an infection? Will I transmit it to my baby? I think that again is an important question, because a lady is dealing with another life, So obviously, if I have an infection, if I get infection, what will happen to my baby? Will I transfer my baby? Others, we know that they can only transmit through, droplet or all. But here, the baby is within self, so obviously that question comes: is it safe to do a breastfeeding? Will my baby fall ill? And is it safe to immunize my child? And so on. So, number of these questions are coming in the context of COVID-19 and these worries, and some of them look justifiable. And so what is happening? Why I'm posing this question? Because all this is giving rise to anxiety and worries and so on. So that is why it is so important that to talk about it, to discuss about it. I am surprised that it's coming as the 7th or 8th lecture in the series. Rather, it should have come much in the beginning, because these are the worries which are coming to everyone's mind. It is not. I am not talking of a mental health condition here. I am not talking of a postpartum conditions here. I am not talking of any labeling of psychiatric condition. These are the general worries which are happening to everyone. Leave aside the psychiatric condition. Now, there are two other concerns, I think, in the context of postpartum psychiatric disorder, which are important. One is that worries which are encircling the prevention of COVID-19 in self or baby. Like, it is important that adequate information needs to be there for optimization of risk prevention. I think that is very important, that adequate information to be provided, and process of ensuring this adequate information. It's not only important to provide the information, but also we need to ensure that they are being implemented. I think that is important. Knowledge on available emergency setup, which is important. Like say for example, any pregnant lady who is there and wants to have a delivery, so should know that in the emergency, where should I go, whom should I approach, what I should do. So that information is very important, and that it's the responsibility of all of us to provide that information. And even there are concerns, mortality fee at death, we know that how much information is coming about death, though the percentage is very less, 2 to 3%, but still that, because in everyone's mind it comes, that, what will happen. And what we have seen that, these worries about fear and about dying is so much, people may not talk about it, because the way it's been projected in the media, in the television, it's so much, it is causing a fear, because we all also know that pregnancy itself or postpartum phase itself is a risk in that way with regard to excessive worry, with regard to immunological compromise. So, there are issues related to that. So, it is natural that some of those fears may be coming to their mind. And limited visitor allowed in the hospital. Again, that is a concern which are worrying them. I think that the other is the absence of social support, which again is leading to a lot of anxiety, taking care of newborn, and fear of lack of support. I think, and the adjustment to the parenthood. As I said, that in our society, that's norm that the support system comes into place. They, usually we have seen that maybe the parents or in-laws have not seen them, but during the pregnancy time, it is the norm that everyone come together and take care of them, of the mother as well as the baby. And because of this COVID time, so that is the concern which may be there. Fear, separation from partner or support system during labor or delivery. And and deprived of typical pregnancy experience. Like we know that in our culture, a lot of ritual happens. A lot of celebrations happen in different parts of the country. We all know that. That is a very relaxing and soothing, and everyone looks forward to it. But now with this, COVID-19, that may not be happening. That may not be happening for the reason we all know. So again, that may be adding up to the worries and absence of social support. Then the important issue, I think, I want to also raise here. I will not talk in the detail much here because that is the intimate partner violence, domestic violence. I think a few weeks back, I gave a lecture about this domestic violence, the way it has increased in recent time. Again, that's an important concern, and I think we all need to be aware of. In fact, it itself is an independent lecture to talk about. But I just want to raise this point, the partner violence, which are domestic violence, because again, we all know that because of financial strain which is happening in the household, a large amount we are spending time quarantine together, and which again increases the tension which is leading to a violence because women are not used to that men staying at home because so obviously this is causing a lot of violence, and of course there is underreporting also, and when I gave this lecture, I gave the helpline number that what they should do, and we know that how common it is. And there is increase of domestic violence. It came in the news, and so we need to be aware, especially in the context of postpartum phase or pregnancy phase. Then again, the other issue is, I think, women undergoing treatment on fertility also for assisted reproductive technology. At many places, such intervention have been suspended because of COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, there are certain issues with regard to, that women who are in delayed phase of their reproductive life, so they cannot, delay their pregnancy. So a lot of concerns are there, those who are undergoing fertility treatment also, especially in the context of COVID-19. Now, I will just talk briefly about postpartum depression because Dr. Amandeep has talked about antepartum depression. So I think postpartum depression is a very important entity. I think it is very common. It is a serious public health concern. And I will just give you the important figure. 1 in 7 women have a postpartum depression. So that's a huge number, in that way. And these are evidence-based numbers. And, the important thing is that in these women, 1 in 5 women, they do have a thought of harming themselves. I think that's the key thing here, harming themselves. And also, we need to be aware of harming their child. And there are different reviews are there available, evidence-based, which says 6.5 to about 13% happens in first 6 months. Again, postpartum phase, let me tell you from psychiatry point of view, it is taken a 1 year period, from the day of delivery till 1 year, But there is a lot of debate whether 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, and so on. But maximum it happens within 3 months or 4 months or so period. But even 6 months, So, but in general, we take around 1 year period for risk of a psychiatric conditions, which because there are some which can happen immediately after birth, after delivery. There are some which happen a bit late, So that is why we need to be aware of. And people used to think that it does not happen. It's not a much issue in a developing country, but of course it is. And what the WHO report says that the low and middle income countries, they are at serious risk of postpartum depression. We need to be aware of. And of course, there are a lot of issues, and we need to be aware of stigma and multiple issues, risk factors with regard to postpartum depression. In India also, it's not that what I was saying is the international, but India also, we have enough literature, enough data to suggest that our magnitude is very huge. In fact, people have done studies, and there is a kind of pooled estimate which comes to around 22%. So just see that it's more than 1 in 5. So just imagine, it is so common, postpartum depression. And even in the community sample, 11% women, they do have, especially from southern India, multiple studies are there. So what I'm trying to say here is that it is an important condition which is often ignored, often missed, and I will tell you that what the impact it can have. In fact, we were also part of one study long time back, about 15 18 years back, with the community medicine department, and we published this also, incidence and prevalence of postpartum depression, rural community of India, and there also it was a significant number, around 10% or so of postpartum depression. So it's not the condition of the West; it can happen in our population, in our country also, in our population also. Diagnosis of depression is very straightforward. I think Dr. Amandeep has already talked about the ECDS scale, and when we apply this scale, we have to see in consideration last 7 days, and those with see that again there are certain norms that 10 to 30 is taken as a cutoff. Maximum score is 30. But depression, the key symptoms are depressed mood, loss of interest, and loss of energy. So these are the key symptoms. Other symptoms are also there, but that is how we make a diagnosis. In general, we make a diagnosis of depression. But here the key thing in the postpartum phase are there are few key things which are important. Because one of the symptoms is the lack of sleep. Normally we ask for depression, but in postpartum depression, what is important is that I am not able to get a sleep when my child is sleeping. Because we all know that when a child is not sleeping, obviously we will also not sleep. So we'll have to reframe the question. Like normally we ask that how is your sleep? You say that, okay, I am not sleeping well, or so that's generally we ask. But here in postpartum, we need to specifically ask, okay, when your child is sleeping, are you able to sleep or not properly? So this is what the question we need to ask. Then when we talk of lack of interest, because that's a key thing, key symptom of depression, in generally that is what we call as anhedonia, lack of pleasure. But here the issue is that I am not able to, I am not interested for being my motherhood, So that is a specific thing which can happen from the postpartum depression. I am not able to enjoy or pleasure of taking care of my child, that motherhood, that feeling of enjoyment which should come for the motherhood is not there, And of course, some of the thoughts are which are more typical for depression, postpartum depression, is that harming the child also. Because harming yourself is a part of depression, we all know about it. But here the other symptom is that, one has a thought about harming the child also. Some of the obsessive thoughts also which can happen, that I may, hurt my child. I may, do something bad for my child. I may throw my child. So like these thoughts may come, obsessive thought. It is said that those who have postpartum depression, about 50% of them may also have a obsessive thoughts about, or intrusive thoughts negatively about their child also. So these are some of the specific things. If we are inquiring about depression in a mother, we need to ask about this. Then, of course, that was a postpartum depression. Then postpartum anxiety is also very common, which is common in Western country, but also in our country. What the common presentation are: constant worry, racing thoughts, being overwhelmed, tearfulness, tension, irritability, lack of sleep, panic attacks. All these are the common presentation. And of course, perinatal specific is ruminating thoughts on baby's well-being, difficulty leaving the house, controlling parenting style, because we have different types of parenting. So one of the controlling parenting styles, intrusive thoughts about the child, and so on. And these are some of the risk factors for postpartum anxiety and depression. Of course, some of them already have Dr. Amandeep talked about: prior depression or anxiety, unwanted pregnancy, domestic violence, substance abuse, abuse in the family, physical abuse. We know that how common it is. Discord with a partner, medical complication in mother, prior perinatal loss, complication of baby, social isolation, poor support, and discontinuation of antidepressant medication. So these are some of the important respective evidence base for postpartum depression and anxiety. Now, if you ask what's the impact of postpartum depression and anxiety, simple to say that the suicide is one of the important cause of maternal death. We all need to be aware of, and so important. Let me tell you that internationally suicide is one of the leading cause of death. Even in the lockdown period, we know that in the death, young people, the suicide was one of the leading cause of death. So especially maternal death. And I will tell you why in our country it is important, because in other countries or Western countries, the ratio of male to female is around 3:1 or 4:1. But in India, it is 1.5:1. So what I'm trying to say, the woman death in our country is much more as compared to Western population. So that is why the concern is so much, and that is why. And one of the important things to take care of suicide or self-harm is taking care of the mental health of a mother. I think, and that is one of the basic strategies for reducing the incidence of suicide. Then the other postpartum conditions, because the topic was mental health issues of postpartum, there are others I am not talking in detail. One is we all know baby blues or the postpartum blues. It is just an adjustment disorder. It's so common, you will be surprised at how common it is. In the textbook, it says 75 to 80% of the women have. But these are very simple and transient phenomena which happen in 2-3 days after delivery, which peaks and which remits, within 2 weeks. It is so common, anxiety, sleep problem, thoughts, which happens. But again, you may not give a definite drug treatment, but reassurance, explanation is enough. Asking a mother to take a proper rest and sleep. So, but this condition is very, very common. Up to 75 to 80%, you will be surprised. And these are the figures. I think that is why we need to be aware. The other condition which is rare, that is what we call as postpartum psychosis or bipolar disorder, which is about 1 to 2 per thousand. But they are very severe conditions, because then these are the conditions which may lead to a suicide attempt or even harm to a child also, infanticide. So the postpartum psychosis in that way is a very important condition, though the prevalence is less. The other condition which is not talked about much is the postpartum OCD also, because the intrusive thoughts about child, which is so unique in this perinatal period, I think which can happen. But again, these are treatable conditions. We need to identify it, but definitely these are hidden problems. So I'm not talking much in detail about it. Now, what the impact can be there to the infant development. I think why we are discussing that, why we need to identify and treat them or manage them is the reason being infant development. Like first year of a child is very important for cognitive development. Long-term adverse implication maybe there is not treated. There can be increased cortisol. We all know cortisol increase is linked with the stress. We all know that there is HPA increase is there. There is increase of norepinephrine, increase, there is a fussiness in the child, discontent, avoidance. So all this behavior may be there in the infant. There is a problem with the insecure attachment may be there in the child. And of course, there may be neurological delay also, lower weight percentile. All these are related to postpartum psychiatric disorder. Decreased responsivity to facial expression. These are all evidence-based. Decreased vocalization, play and exploratory behavior. So just imagine that how much it has impact on the child or the infant. Then of course there are impact on the childhood development also. Longitudinal research, we look after young children and adolescents also. We all know there is an increase of behavioral problem. Any mother who has a postpartum depression or anxiety or any psychiatric problem, the risk of child having the problem, behavioral problem much more, or even reduction in the cognitive functioning, decrease in the social competence, increase in salivary cortisol level, or even predicting a depression in the child also, in the childhood. So you have a problem in the infant, you can have a problem in the child also. Then of course, there are problem maybe there in the mother also, problem with related role functioning, impaired self-image, there may be guilt, shame or fear, so all these may be there. How much time I have, if you can, just tell me so that accordingly I can, because I know that time is important factor. So
Sir,
Can you just tell me how much time you have?
sir, we have around
Mr.
5 minutes, and I would like
Okay.
to ask you a few questions and key messages we have from audience.
Okay, I will just wind up then. I will,
Thank you,
I
sir.
will wind up then in few minutes. Then. Okay. There may be problem in mother-infant bonding also. I'm not talking in detail, but there may be issues in the mother-infant bonding. And of course, the whole lot of conditions, if mental health condition untreated, it can be associated with a lot of other conditions. I will skip here. And I will just tell you that because Dr. Vatsala is not here, we did a ICMR project, funded project. The title was Depression and Anxiety Disorder in the Postpartum Period, Prevalence, Psychosocial Correlates, and the Effect of Mother-Infant Bonding. I think, hope she would have been here, then we could have discussed in the community. We had seen about 680 pregnant women, and we took around 4 to 6 months of after delivery, and we looked into not only psychiatric disorder but also psychosocial issues, stress, bonding, even domestic violence. So all these we have studied this as a part of ICMR funded project. In the management, I think we all know for postpartum psychiatric disorder, medication, psychotherapy, and social support need to be there. And of course, at this current moment, I think we need to embrace the telemedicine and telepsychotherapy. And the message I want to give here is that that is available. Anyone, can use the facility. And but to those who are not able to use the internet facility, of course, local health resources will provide the solution. Screening for mental health is important, and detailed psychoeducation, I think that can be done because we know that a good number of people may not have access to internet facilities. But important thing is the telemedicine. One needs to embrace the telemedicine facility. The other thing is virtual social connectedness. I think that is important. Telephone call, video conferencing with the family members and friends. Feeling connected is so important. Always be given a lecture that you may be, physically distancing, but socially you can be connected with regard to even the celebration I was talking about earlier. You can have a virtual celebration, I think, and that you can do, or even the rituals, virtual, those can be there. And I have given some example to people and they have really enjoyed that, so that can be done. And those who have a limited access to internet, telephone call can be made and so on. Then self-care is important. Everyone can be told because self-care is something which is often ignored. And with regard to mental health, self-care is so important that anyone can do. I think as an expert, we need to tell everyone in the family, pregnant lady, that self-care with regard to sleep, nutrition, exercise, time off, and so on. The whole lot of things are there. Maybe if I have time later, I can discuss about it. Then engaging more fully with the baby. I think that we need to tell that the more you are attached to the baby, that will be stress buster for you, and how you can develop mother-infant bonding and so on. And these are all important for a good infant development as well. And so these are some of the recommendations also. That minimum watching of the news related to anxiety and distress. Normalizing the anxiety during COVID-19 infection, a reliable source of information needs to be there, and some of the sanitization and hygiene technique has to be followed. Teleconsultation already we talked about, and also breastfeeding is so important that we need to give that message. A lot of worries are there in the mind, so that we have to follow. And of course there are certain things which need to be done even during breastfeeding, is that hand washing and avoiding touching and so on. So that we need to tell the mothers and the family that what all they can do. I think the whole important thing is that we need to focus on the prevention of mental disorder. Now, prevention I'm meaning at different levels. What Dr. Ramandeep also talked about, primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention of mental disorder in postpartum period, and moving toward ensuring a well-being for sound maternal mental health. And so I think we need to address perinatal mental health issues are so important. A mother and how we can take care of baby, and there is a likelihood that a mother during COVID-19 outbreak are likely to experience more increased distress, and so there needs to be high priority. So we need to put this at the focus. I will end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. That was really, really informative and, in fact, very comprehensively and detailed cover. In fact, all our audience can benefit from such simple ideas at home, like by video conferencing and how to stay connected. That was a very, very good advice to all the mothers in the postpartum. I would like to take one question from Dr. A quick question, because we have only 2 minutes left, from Dr. Atrey Ganguly. That what is your WHO perspective on maternal mental well-being, and how is WHO taking forward this agenda?
Thank you once again. Well, WHO deals with maternal well-being from prevention to early diagnosis and treatment. In prevention, we believe that maternal mental well-being should be a part of the ANC, where the mother and family are taught about the warning signs. The ASHAs who go for home visits can also further see into it. Secondly, early diagnosis. Once these warning signs are known to the family and ASHA, these cases can be picked up from the community and referred to the facilities where they can be catered to. We have many programs like the mental health program, which are available services in the district hospitals. Also, the health and wellness centers, many of them are taking up mental health, and maternal health is already there, so they can help as a link. And also the overarching what we advocate is the need to sensitize the community. Well, WHO advocates for having training of the non-specialists because of the dearth of mental health professionals. So the non-specialist cadres need to be trained at every level, and for that WHO has a manual called the MH Gap, which is very important in this. From the advocacy perspective, yes, it was 2017 when the World Health Day was on depression, and mental health as an issue came into limelight. From there, we've been advocating for further inclusion of mental health in all possible forums. And national suicide prevention strategy is something which we are working on with the government. Also, with the COVID in place, we are in the process of development with the government a national psychosocial action plan, where the pregnant mothers, expecting mothers, and lactating mothers are a part of the vulnerable group. And the overarching, we believe that the capacity building of health staff will help in early identification and promotion of mental health. These are few points from WHO India. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So I would like to take last one very quick question with sir. Sir, what will be your key advice to the mothers in the antenatal and postpartum period? Just 3 key messages.
You are muted.
Can you see him?
Yeah, you can hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I think what we want to give advice that these are difficult times, challenging time, and so want to give that, and these are all because if whatever anxiety is there, they are normal, phenomena. And always we say that what is stress? Stress is a normal reaction to something abnormal, So these are normal phenomena. So what one should do is take a help, because whenever there is a problem, we should not shrug away from taking help from anyone. So I think help is available within the family, within friends, within in the society. So we just need to come forward and take that help. So that is one. The other is that if any, because we are talking in the context of pregnant women or postpartum phase or perinatal in that way. So have the emergency number. See that if there is anything happen, what they should do, how they will go to the hospital, whom they should contact. So have that emergency thing ready with yourself, and spend time with your child. Not worry much, because let me tell you, always I say when I see my children also in my clinic, because the mother's anxiety is so important, it's amplified 10 times in a child. In a simple way, what I'm trying to say here is, a child knows that my mother is anxious or not. If mother is anxious, then anxiety in the child will go 10 times. So what I'm trying to say, mother have to be much bold in that way, have to project themselves as take away that anxiety part, and they need to spend more time with the child in a proper frame of mind, and take all the precautions. And whenever there is a problem, you should consult. And I think this time will pass off. Of course, a lot of negative things are coming, but you just have to be positive. I think always we say your thinking is so important. The more the positive thinking you have, you should not be positive with regard to COVID-19, but the thinking should be positive. And let me tell you, I just want to reiterate this point. People who have in the stress also, who have a positive thinking, they are able to overcome the problem. So the deleterious effect of the stress is not there in those people who have positive thinking. So you just have to think in that way, and this time will go away, and the support is there within the family and around us. You just have to raise your hand. I think that's the message I have to give.
Thank you, sir. That was really, really encouraging for all of us. And I would like to thank Dr. Ramandeep and Dr. Atrey Ganguly